Everyone, please welcome to the Just Economy Conference, United States Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Hello to the National Community Reinvestment Coalition and all of you who are here today. Thank you for inviting me to join you in this conference. I want to give a very special shout out to Jesse Van Toll, to John Taylor, to Bob Dickerson, to Katie Crosby. Thank you all for your incredible partnership. NCRC does powerfully important work to create opportunities for people, to champion fairness and end discrimination in lending, in housing, and in business. And I just want to say a big thank you to all of you for all that you do. For far too long, our government hasn't been working for most people. Sure, it works great for the wealthy and the well-connected, but for everyone else, not so much. And this injustice has always targeted Black and brown communities that have been systematically denied access to wealth and income. COVID-19 has also made it impossible to ignore that our health system is unequal right down to its core. People of color and indigenous people in the United States have suffered the largest burden of illness, hospitalization, and death during the COVID-19 crisis. These inequities are unconscionable. And right now, our nation has serious choices to make about how we recover from these economic and public health crises. We can decide to prioritize making this recovery a racially just recovery. We have to make different choices as a nation, and it starts by reframing what a strong economy looks like. When the overall unemployment rate drops, but remains higher for families of color, that is not a strong economy. When more young white families are buying homes, but the median young Black family has a total wealth of only $600, that is not a strong economy. We have to stop allowing the economic well-being of people of color to be expendable. We have to start by asking questions about racial disparities in our economy and build our solutions from there. The America we want to be is an America that lifts all of us, an America that creates opportunities for all of us. The more inclusive our economy is, the more prosperity we can build together. The way I see it, we've got a lot of work to do to make that happen. We've got to root out corruption in Washington by breaking up the influence of rich folks who make their voices heard over everyone else's. And we've got to make sure that billionaires and big corporations pay their fair share. We've got to root out the systemic racism that has long plagued our country, which has locked people of color out from economic prosperity. And we've got to fight for a more inclusive middle class that gives every American a fighting chance. We've got to fight for legislation such as my bill, the American Housing and Economic Mobility Act, because it will help bring down housing costs for renters and buyers, and it will help level the playing field so working families everywhere can find a decent place to live at a decent price. We've also got to fight to protect consumers, and this starts by having a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that is willing to use its available tools to ensure that consumers won't get cheated and that financial institutions comply with anti-discrimination laws. So look, none of us is in this fight alone, and that's why I'm speaking with you today. If we all make our voices heard, we can take power away from the wealthy and well-connected in Washington, and we can put it back where it belongs, in the hands of the people. So to all of you who are here, I'm grateful for all that you do and all that you will do. Please keep up the great work. We're counting on you. People across this country are counting on you.
I'm so proud of my senator from Massachusetts. I wish there were a few more voices in the Senate like her. There are a few, but a lot more I'd love to see. But thank you, everybody, for giving me the opportunity to address you virtually. I'd obviously love to be there and see people and be able to have side room conversations and so on, as we always do at our annual conferences. And thank you to all the people who are sponsoring and supporting this. I really appreciate it. In the late 1990s, at the invite of Joe Kennedy, I went to Washington, D.C. to volunteer with a small group of Washington inside the Beltway nonprofits. They had come together to save CRA from being gutted. And by 1991, this group of volunteers decided that they really needed to have staff to head this new coalition, which they called the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. They asked me to apply for this position. And on January 2nd, 1992, I was made president. And there I was in Georgetown, alone in a cold, windowless office, generously made available to us by the Center for Community Change. From that humble beginning, we've grown from that one staff person to over 100 across our various programs and enterprises. And through the next 3 decades, we had some rather astounding success. Number one, we saved CRA from being gutted or repealed. That was the whole point of why we came together. Another big success was we got HMDA data to be publicly available. Before NCRC, you had to have a mainframe computer, and it was really next to impossible to get the data on what banks were doing in lending and mortgages across the country. Today, you can get that for free on 2 CD-ROMs, every mortgage made in the country. More importantly, we changed the way banks are examined under CRA. If you understand that in the old days, the process for examining banks was actually based on process. You had to have a file and a sign, and you had to have certain trappings that you were complying with CRA. In effect, your performance was not necessarily measured as much as your structure for complying with CRA. And this obviously did not serve low and moderate income borrowers and people of color very well. President Clinton and Al Gore invited NCRC to appear on the lawn of the White House to announce 2 new initiatives. One was regulatory reform, CRA regulatory reform, to take the regime by which banks were measured and under CRA and redefined it, and to help create a new entity in the U.S. Department of Treasury known as the CDFI Fund. President Clinton actually appointed me as the first community representative to serve on the CDFI advisory board. The important thing there is that I'll get to that. The Federal Reserve Bank, working with the OCC, Gene Ludwig was the head of the OCC at the time, played a key role in this, to craft a performance-based regulatory oversight. So that we were going from a process-based to a performance-based. What are actually doing in the way of lending? And I'll never forget that meeting at the Federal Reserve Bank and in the meeting room of the Board of Governors, which I was invited to, and it was full of press. And in making the announcement of what the new rules were going to be, the person announcing started by saying, first, I want to recognize the work of NCRC and the input it generated through our members to establish the community perspective on how these banks would be regulated. In fact, and I remember this, it was the first time in the history of the Federal Reserve Bank that the number of comments the Federal Reserve received from community groups outnumbered those of financial institutions. Normally, when there's a regulation or a request for input on a rule, the industry organizes itself and gets in all their letters. But for the first time, we got more community voices in there, and it helped. Built and organized as a civil rights coalition, totaling 637 nonprofit organizational members, whose common focus is economic justice. This has been truly the greatest impact, I think, of NCRC. We've had a myriad of legislative and regulatory successes. One I just mentioned. We were very instrumental in helping, and part of the leadership group in helping to build the CFPB, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. Most recently, well, not so recently, we added Section 1071 to the Dodd-Frank Act, requiring small business lending to be reported by banking institutions. We led the opposition to CRA reform, deform proposals by Walmart and other non-banks, and are now watchdogging it as cryptocurrency and fintech firms as they try to get into banking. But perhaps one of our greatest accomplishments has been our work over the last several years to procure community benefits agreements from financial institutions seeking to acquire other banks or seeking to improve their CRA record. In the last 6 years, NCRC has procured 15 community benefits agreements, written signed agreements, commitments totaling $298 billion, an astounding figure. And these commitments are for banks to make more loans, investments, grants in low and moderate income communities and minority neighborhoods, and to make sure that branches stay open or they open them where they don't exist. So we focused, on creating opportunities also for NCRC outside of these benefit agreements. We focused on being more self-reliant, wanting to avoid being in the situation where we're constantly reacting to a foundation that changes its priorities, or a program officers leave and the new person comes in, they have a different idea of what they should be funding, or the same thing happens even with federal and state money. So we really felt that in order to have the independence that we really needed to have as first and foremost an advocacy organization, we really needed to become more masters of our own destiny. So we set about trying to generate our own income. Surprisingly, a lot of funders, they just didn't fund advocacy and organizing. Occasionally they would, but it was not high on their list. So we've created a couple of funds where we hope to create affordable housing and have been doing that. In fact, I think we just passed 700 homes that are now owned by low and moderate income people, or in low and moderate income neighborhoods, that we have been responsible for acquiring, rehabbing, and selling. And at the same time, we have a fund that's launching now called NCRC Equivoco, that's going to be doing small business lending to minority-owned small businesses, women-owned and veteran-owned. And in both of these funds, we hope over time, as they become very successful and prosperous and get a lot of investors, hopefully investing at reasonable rates, that will allow us to procure or provide homes and small businesses with loans, and to help traditionally underserved neighborhoods grow, but at the same time to help NCRC. We also acquired and own our own office building and managed to hold on to the previous headquarters, both in Washington, both in the shadow of the US Treasury and the White House. These are major assets that in the future will be helpful to NCRC's independence. So with foundation support and other supports, NCRC in the last 5 short years has doubled the size of its revenue. Today, we have an annual budget of over 35 million annually. Well, that's a bit redundant, but let me just say, a few years ago, I approached the board and asked them to split my job in two, from being president, CEO to just president, and to hire a new CEO. The board did a national search and thankfully settled on who I believe to be the best candidate for the job, someone with the economic justice experience and knowledge, and someone dedicated to the mission and strategies of NCRC. My then COO, Jesse Van Tall. And I think that was a very wise decision on the part of the board, and it certainly made me very happy. And then we did something that everybody else said was a bad idea. Jesse and I split the responsibilities. Jesse became CEO for 3 years, and I became president and founder for 3 years. We co-lead this incredible and dynamic organization. The truth of the matter is, probably at the beginning, I had to get used to not making every decision, but that didn't take long. And with the help of Bob Dickerson and Jesse and working with me and I with them, we were able to create a very effective management system in which Jesse and I ran different aspects of the organization and had a lot of success. NCRC has had a lot of talented staff come and go through NCRC over these many years, and many have left an indelible imprint on our success and efforts. Today, NCRC, in my opinion, has the best compilation of staff we've ever had. This bodes well for our ability to impact this country going forward to address economic justice, discrimination, and income inequality. But equally important has been the absolutely fabulous and selfless board of directors who throughout our organizational history have come and gone and helped NCRC have the impact that it's had. From our original chairman, F. Barton Harvey III, and so many other distinguished chairs, Irvin Henderson, Bethany Sanchez, and for the past 9 years, the very best of all chairs, my personal opinion, Bob Dickerson. I am grateful for all their wisdom, their commitment to NCRC, their friendship, their patience with me, and their commitment to helping this organization stay on the right path and be successful in nearly all of its endeavors. So many organizations struggle with board members that limit the ability of their executive leaders to fly. My board, throughout these 30 years, have created and nurtured the wind in my sails, and will be forever grateful to them for that. And now the time has come for me to pass the torch to the next generation. I am announcing my decision to retire from full-time employment at NCRC on August 1st of this year. I will work full-time until that date. Afterwards, the board and Jesse have asked that I remain in a consulting capacity to both Jesse and the board in areas where I can lend support and insight. I will also continue to pursue the development of a TV program that I'm working on with Florentine Pictures about the white working class. That's a whole other story, and I wish I had time to tell you about it, but I'm hoping we change the quality of the conversation out there about how people prosper in this country. So no kid from the projects with a public school education, dependent upon food stamps and selling newspapers and shiny shoes to give my money to my mom, should have enjoyed the incredible and beautiful life that I have had under NCRC. I remember that day on January 2nd, 1992, wondering if in that cold and dark office, what I had left Boston and had I made a mistake. And just as a, I don't know what this is, but I'd like them to put up a graph of what I looked like at the beginning, and you can all see what I look like now. So if the folks in cyberspace computer land wouldn't mind putting up that, okay. So you all get to see that under the sign there, Building Community Lender Partnerships. That's me, and that's Janet Reno on the left down there, and that's Bill Clinton and Irvin Henderson, my chair at the time. Okay, we can get rid of that. So it's been quite an endeavor to serve all these years, but really, I am so blessed to have been able to do this. And people are always saying, wow, you're amazing, you're this, you're that. I would be nothing without the staff, without the board, and without the members. That day, on January 2nd, 1992, when I moved to Georgetown, of course, they're in Georgetown where the public transportation doesn't reach because the white people in those days didn't want people different people coming out on the train to their neighborhood. That's where my first office was, thanks to the Center for Community Change. And ever since that day, I was blessed and before that day, I was blessed to have on my side a person with incredible sensibilities and common sense, who, another miracle in my life, loved me. Susan Forward is and has been my rock, ever catching me in all my stumbles, ever supporting me in all my endeavors. She has sacrificed a lot in this process and has never complained. Just how incredibly successful should one guy from public housing be? I certainly wish everybody else that same success. I will always thank those who stood beside me, in front of me and behind me. And most of all, I will remember you, the members, and our allies and supporters who made all of this possible and will make much more of a future and greater contribution still that NCRC can make with you, through you, towards addressing the just income inequality and racist history and things that we need to eliminate so that everybody in this country can get a decent education, good health care, live in an affordable home, and have a job with a livable wage. That's a democracy. That's what a democracy should look like. So I'm moving on, not out. I will be here for the next 3 months, and then for the next 3 years, a consultant. So to Jesse and the board. But let me leave you with this quote from a very brilliant person. Civil rights leaders never die. They just become a little more civil and a lot more righteous. If you want, you can ask me and I'll tell you who said that. But thank you, everyone. And thanks again to my lovely and beautiful wife, Susan Forward.
Congratulations, John. Love you, brother. So proud
you.
to call you a mentor and a friend. You had me tearing up with your tribute to Susan. Very touching. And I just want people to know and appreciate. I mean, John built this organization from scratch. When he described showing up at the NCRC office, it was just him. And now we're a thriving organization. It would be tribute enough to know and understand that 2,000 of you are participating in this conference. That's a sign of what John has built, of what NCRC is today. And we're going to take the time to celebrate John properly in the fall. You can imagine it's a great frustration to all of us to not be in person for this moment. But we separated our awards dinner from the conference. We're going to hold that gala in the fall and honor and celebrate John. We hope to do it in person in DC this fall, if COVID allows, and we hope all of you will join us. For now, I want to encourage you to throw John some love in the chat. I did just want to take a minute, just a minute now, though, to recognize John's leadership, not through my words and not anything that people prepared for this moment, because we really are announcing today John's retirement. We hadn't shared it before. But just a few things that other people have said about John over the years. I wanted to share those with you now. John's leadership is why HUD Secretary Sean Donovan once called John the moral compass of Washington, D.C. And some of you may have heard that quote before. Maybe some of you were at the conference where the HUD Secretary said that. You might not know the backstory that Sean Donovan said that because John had basically told the Obama administration that they were taking the wrong position on housing finance reform. He stood up and said, you need to do what's right. And we won that fight. We won that fight because John wasn't afraid to tell even his friends when they were wrong. That's the kind of moral backbone that John has always had. It's why Ron Phillips, the retired leader of CEI in Maine and our leader in our field, once said about John, Let me find this here. I'm on the wrong page. Once said about John that he said, "I've known John since he took over NCRC, started NCRC. His life has been entirely dedicated not just to the rhetoric of civil rights, but the details of doing the work to ensure legislation and regulations for more just capital markets. Our work at CEI would not have been possible without John. His critical contribution was to enliven and make more relevant the Community Reinvestment Act. Without CRA, none of us could do our jobs. It's why Bill Bynum, leader of the Hope Federal Credit Union, had this to say about John. Few people have impacted community development as much as John Taylor. Through passionate, consistent, and data-grounded advocacy, John forged NCRC into a force that the banking community could not ignore. As a result, CDFIs, the community development sector, and those we serve have realized billions in investments that would not have otherwise been made. And John's leadership is why the Reverend Jesse Jackson said this at our 2018 conference. John Taylor cares. He puts his brain in character in perfect synchronization. It makes things happen. There's no other organization like NCRC in America. I could keep going with the accolades and recognition that John deserves, and I know many of you have great things to say as well. But we want to do this properly in person in the fall, so we do hope that you will join us. Details, date to be announced, and details to be provided. But we want to thank and recognize John properly for 30 years of his work in just, in pursuing economic justice and ensuring fairness and opportunity for all Americans. The board, the NCRC board, has also authorized me to create the John Taylor Economic Justice Legacy Fund to honor John's contributions to our work and support NCRC's ongoing success. More details on that to come, and I hope you will consider contributing. For now, we are going to leave it there. I want to thank John from the bottom of my heart. He really has been an incredible mentor to me. He's the reason why I'm here today as I take over after August 1st as president and CEO, leading all of NCRC's programs. I couldn't have done it without John. There's no doubt in my mind. He really formed me into the person I am today. So I want to just thank him so deeply. I'm in awe of what he has done as I take over. It's a weighty responsibility, but he has laid a very strong foundation for the organization for decades to come as we pursue our mission of creating a just economy. And I want to thank all of you. John and I couldn't do the work that we do without people supporting us, the NCRC board, the NCRC members, our funders, all of you attending this conference here today. We really appreciate you. You're why we do the work, and we're a coalition, and we believe there's power in being a coalition, and we want to thank all of you for your support over the years. I did want to say we're ending this session a little bit early, and I know John and I will be heading over to the Just Cafe. So if you'd like to say hello to John, we have a little bit of time before our next event at 4. If you want to say hello to John or to me, please do join us there. You go into your app and click on Just Cafe, and it's a pretty neat platform, pretty easy to use. You can swim around. So that's a wrap on the keynote portion of our conference, but not for the conference as a whole. The conference continues daily over the next 2 weeks with Just Economy sessions. These are the breakout sessions and workshops on many more topics. You'll see the schedule here, and we hope you'll come back for those. And if you missed something during the conference, most sessions are being recorded and will be accessible shortly via the agenda. So feel free to hang out, talk in the Just Cafe, which is going to be open for people to network and chat until 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then tomorrow at 11:30 a.m., our Just Economy sessions will continue. So we hope to see you there. Thank you very much and enjoy your evening.